How much should you offer on a property? Now, I get this question all the time, so I thought I'd finally make a video on this topic, and I'll break it down into what you should be doing in a buyer's market, a balanced market, and a seller's market, and just give you some pointers to help prepare your offer. Let's get right into it. And first things first, if you are thinking of writing an offer on a property and you're wondering where you should come in terms of price, I would look back, say the past 60 to 90 days, and see what has sold that's similar to the property in question. And you want to compare apples to apples. So the same neighborhood, if it's a condo, the same condo complex, the age, the size, the renovations, location. Try to keep everything apples to apples. And I wouldn't go back longer than 90 days. That's a typical, it's kind of like the golden rule in real estate because the market is always changing. It's going up, it's going down. And if you're in a period of time when the market's going up really fast, or if it's kind of declining at a pretty good pace, don't go back more than like 30 to 60 days if possible, just to keep everything kind of within reason. So that would be the first step. Just look at what has sold that's similar to the property in question. And the next thing to consider is how long has the property been on the market? And I say this because if it's a brand new listing, expect a lot of interest and don't expect the seller to negotiate that much off list price if it's brand new. If the listing has been on the market for say 200 days and you've noticed lots of price reductions, feel free to make a more aggressive offer. But if it's like 1 day on the market, don't expect the seller's gonna be too motivated to deal with you if you're coming in below list price. In a red hot seller's market, you have to be aware of brand new listings. They can be very difficult to secure because they get all of the interest. And when there's no inventory in a red hot seller's market, you'll find buyers they're waiting for listings to hit the market. They rush to see them. There's 10 other offers. They get themselves into bidding wars. They drive the price up and they lose out, and they repeat this cycle over and over again. So beware of new listings if it's a seller's market. But if it's a balanced market or a buyer's market and it's been on the market for a long time and you've seen a few price reductions, I wouldn't be coming in at list price. I would still be respectful and reasonable and base your offer on what has sold recently. But if it's been a long time on the market, you can probably come down in price a little bit. Next point is the condition of the property. Is it sparkling new? Is it rough around the edges? Is it a pigsty? This will affect the price of your offer. And I see this quite often with sellers where they could be looking at their neighbor that's the same size, same age, same neighborhood, and it's sold for $500,000, and this seller wants the same price, but the condition of their property is drastically worse. So if you're a buyer, you have to take everything into consideration, and if the property is very rough, don't be coming in at list price just because that seller thinks their home is equal to their neighbor. So you just have to look at everything, and the condition of the home is definitely one of the major factors. Now, if you're a seller, you think this would be quite obvious to price the property where it should be based on the condition, but not the case. I see overpriced listings all the time on the MLS. And again, if you're a buyer, the condition of the home matters, and base your price where the condition kind of puts it. Next point is managing expectations. Now, this is a big one. If you're a buyer and say your budget is, say it's $500,000, don't expect that you can look at properties for $550,000 or higher and thinking that seller could come down to say $500,000. It doesn't really work that way in Calgary. We typically have a very tight list to sales price ratio. And as of right now, it's November 15th, 2025. And citywide across all product types, the list to sales price ratio is 97.5%. So on a $500,000 property, that roughly works out to a sales price of around say $487 to $490, give or take. So if you're looking at a $500K property, they're not coming down to $450 if you're a buyer. Don't assume that you can make that happen. Sure, maybe once in a while that does, but across thousands of sales each month for years and years and years, this ratio kind of holds up. I can recall the worst of times in 2016, 2017, it was 97%. And when it gets red hot, it's 100%. So it's only a 3 to 5% kind of swing in terms of list to sales price ratio. So if you're a buyer, manage your expectations. If you're looking at a $500K property, assume it'll probably sell around $485 to $490 on average. Next point, when structuring your offer, it's a good thing for the buyer's agent to ask the listing agent about the seller's motivation. Now, often they won't tell you, but there are a lot of bad agents out there who will kind of divulge that information. and they could say, oh, they're very motivated, they bought a property, or they're going through a divorce. They can give you clues as to what's happening, and that can help you out structuring your offer. Now, there might be a few clues online as well. Maybe you're seeing price reductions every 2 weeks. That's obviously a sign the seller is motivated. They want to get rid of the property. Or the opposite, maybe it's been listed for 200 days without a single price reduction. So good luck writing an offer on that property that's a bit lower than expectations, because they're probably not going to look at it. And I think it can be a good idea for the buyer's agent to ask the listing agent about their motivation, possession, what their plans are. You'd be shocked at how often they'll divulge information. Little things like this can give away the seller's position and can help you structure your offer as a buyer. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And you can also ask the listing agent, what is the most important thing for the seller? Maybe it's not price. Maybe it's possession. Maybe they want ultra fast possession. Maybe they want it pushed out into the future a few months. In a hot seller's market, it can be hard to find a property to move into once you sell yours. So possession can be a major thing for a seller. So it's not always about price. And if you give the seller what they want, they might look at a lower offer than what they've expected. And you can also ask the seller, what can we do to make this easier for you? Just little things like that. Try to be cooperative, but it doesn't hurt to get more information regarding the seller, and that might help you structure an offer and get the best price and terms if you're a buyer. And the next section, let's talk about structuring your offer in a buyer's market. So what a buyer's market is when you have more inventory on the market, so there's more homes for sale than there are buyers for those properties. And in a buyer's market, you'll see long days on the market, you'll see falling prices, just a lot of inventory, and the buyers have more leverage, so they can have longer condition dates, pricing can be in their favor, easier to have different terms in the contract like professional cleaning, just stuff like that. It's just a bit easier and more manageable for the buyers. Properties are still selling, so for sellers, they have to price it aggressively and compete against their neighbors, and it has to show well. So it's kind of like a beauty contest and a pricing war for sellers in a buyer's market. Now, I've already talked about this, but even in a buyer's market, you have to be realistic as a buyer when making an offer on a property. If the home is listed for, say, $500,000 and that's the right price, don't expect that you can get it for, say, $450,000. It's not going to happen. I would say if it's a $500K property and it's priced well, most offers will come in at like, say, $480,000, $485,000. And it's probably going to be settled at like, say, $490,000. That is still very typical in our markets. Even in the worst of times in 2016, if you priced it well, this would still be like a similar ratio. So you have to be realistic. But if you're a seller and you've overpriced your property, don't expect for this to happen. In a buyer's market, you're going to have multiple price reductions, and it's going to be a difficult time. Once the days in the market gets up there, it's going to be difficult to get your price, and it's going to cost you in the end. That's why pricing is critical in any market if you're a seller. And this could be a strategy for a buyer. If you're looking for like a discount or some kind of deal, don't go after new listings. Go after listings that are on the market a long time, that have had price reductions. Because if they're on the market a long time without any activity or no price reductions, that seller is not motivated. They're not going to take your offer. But if they've been on the market for a long time and you've seen some price reductions, that's a clue that they're interested, they're motivated, and they might deal with your offer. And another reason why it's difficult to get a major discount in real estate, and that's because the seller and the listing agent are not clueless when it comes to the value of the property. They can see all the sales. On the back end of our real estate system, I can see the past history of properties. I can see everything, conditionally sold, active, expired, terminated. We can see everything, and I give that information to the seller so they know what's happening. So if true market value is $500K, they're not going to accept your offer at, say, $450,000. They just have all of the information, and they have someone looking after their best interests. So even in a buyer's market, you have to be realistic when it comes to pricing. Now, what about cash offers? I get this quite often where people, especially investors, they want a discount because they're paying cash. So in a $500K property, which is true market value, they're going to offer $450,000, but it's cash. Unconditional, but it's cash. Now, I'm going to tell you that most sellers don't really care that much. They're going to be more interested in the $500K with a mortgage versus $450,000 cash in most circumstances. There are occasions where the seller could be frustrated. Maybe they had A few transactions fall apart because of home inspection defects, or maybe they don't want to put their home on the market and go through the whole hassle of doing it, and they might accept like a cash offer. But that's rare. That's probably like 5% of the market. Most sellers want market value, and they don't care if it's cash or a mortgage. But there are some occasions where you might get a discount paying cash, but don't expect that's going to happen all that often. And the last point on the buyer's market, it can be problematic when you write a lowball offer because you might just piss off the listing agent and the seller, and they might not want to deal with you. And when I get lower offers, we just counter them at like full lists. Maybe we counter like the possession or the condition timeline or a higher deposit, but we counter it at full list and give it back to them, and they have nowhere to go. So I think it can be problematic, and more often than not, it'll just work against you. And moving along, let's talk about the seller's market. So this is the market when there's tons of buyer activity, but not many homes for sale. So all the buyers are competing for a few properties, prices are going up, you're seeing unconditional offers, sight unseen offers, rising prices. It's just a bit of a chaotic time. And Calgary was in a market like this from, say, the end of 2021 until mid-2024, I would say. I'm glad it's over. It's a tough market to work in without much inventory. So it's just a bit of a heated time where things are happening very quickly and rising prices and just not much inventory. Now, if you're a buyer in this type of market, you still want to know what's happening with the real estate market. Are there similar properties that have sold recently to this home? And expect the prices are going to go up from that point when that home sold. So you have to kind of project into the future what's happening with prices. Now, when presenting offers in this type of market, you want to know how many offers there are. When is the presentation date? Are there unconditional offers? They might not tell you that, but it doesn't hurt to ask. You'd be surprised what you can find out. You can ask certain things about possession. You can ask what's the most important thing for the seller. Just try to get as much information as you can so that you can present your offer in the best lights. This is a tough market to go through for a buyer, and you might lose out a few times before finding the right property. But the more information that you have will definitely help out your cause. And some other things that are beneficial for you as a buyer besides price is don't go crazy regarding conditions. You still want to have your financing condition, home inspection. If it's a condo, make sure to have a condo review. I wouldn't be getting rid of these regardless of the market because it could bite you. I wouldn't get rid of them, but what you can do is limit the actual timeline. So in a typical market, I usually have, say, 10 business days for financing and a home inspection. In a red hot market, maybe you do 5 days. And that might be what it takes for you to get the transaction, because there might be 5 offers that are all very similar and they have longer conditional timelines. If you come in there with maybe just a home inspection and a financing condition and they're 5 days each, that could be what gets you the property. So it's not always about price. Now, in terms of pricing, you could get creative in this type of market and have an escalation clause. So I'll give you an example of what this is. So say your offer is $600,000. You could have a term in the contract saying that your price will be $5,000 more than the best competitor to your offer, up to a price of, say, $620,000, $625,000. And this could be what gets you the property. So there are different things like this that can help you structure your offer in the right way to get the home. And the same thing with possession. So it's not always about price in this type of market. When the market gets very heated and there's not much inventory, it's hard for people to sell their property then buy something else afterwards because they're also worried about finding a home. So you could have a term in the contract regarding possession where it could be agreed upon by the buyer or the seller in the future, or the seller could actually dictate what the possession date is once they've bought a property. So things like this can help you structure your offer to help you get a leg up on your competition. And the last few points regarding the seller's market, I think you want to work with an agent that's full-time, that's on the ball, that's willing to drop what they're doing and show a property and write an offer without much notice. And this is hard to do if you're part-time because the market moves so fast in this type of market. And lastly, don't go crazy in this type of market. There's always other properties that come available. Don't, write an offer 100K over list, sight unseen, unconditionally. You're just going to get yourself into trouble if you do that. And there's always more properties coming online. There are things that you can do to help your chances out. Don't buy in the spring market, in a hot market. Look into the summer or the winter months. It's a lot calmer, and you might get the property at a lower price if you do this. And the last point regarding your offer in a seller's market, don't offer so much that you're going to be angry at yourself and think they took advantage of you, but don't offer so little that you don't get the property and you're pissed off about it. So just put your best foot forward and be willing to walk away is my best advice regarding this market. And the very last point here, if there are 10 offers on the property and you're still interested, but you're writing an offer that's a normal offer, maybe you're under list price, you've got lots of terms and conditions, I wouldn't be doing this. You're just helping the seller out, getting a higher price, and you're kind of fueling the seller's market. So if this is the case, I would probably just wait for a slower time, like the spring market or the winter, and make a more reasonable offer on a different property versus helping the seller out. All right, we're done here. That's my take on how you should structure your offer. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're out there watching this and you could use some help buying, selling, or relocating to Calgary, I'd love to be a resource and to help you out. I've got some free resources for you in the pinned comments, a buyer's guide, seller's guide, and a relocation guide. And feel free to call, text, or email. I'd love to help you out, and I will see you on the next video.